Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. Today is September 10th already. It's 10 a.m. Central Time, and today I'm so excited. I've got such good guests, and first one is Dr. Nick Housley, who is the Director of Clinical Research, and David Wu, CEO and founder of Motus Nova. And I will actually, we'll be discussing a lot of things, what this is all about. And but anyway, let's just bring on both David and Nick, and we'll start the show. Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Very well. How are you, Jerry?
Hi, good morning.
Yeah, good to have you here. I'll bring up some of the comments and we'll start. But I see that Serena is from Nova Scotia, Canada. Good morning, Serena. Nice to see you. And so, yeah, before we start, maybe we'll wait some more viewers to come in. But I can see quite a bit are coming in. Sometimes take a little bit just to bring up their comments. But so, David, thank you for being able to be here, and you too, Nick. And I was going to start with Nick. You had a pretty great journey of how you got into medical devices. What were you doing now then?
Yeah, it's a bit of a roundabout journey, but I'm glad I'm here now. So kind of started out actually as a professional cyclist for many years. And then I actually myself had a traumatic brain injury, which got me really interested in the process of recovery. Wow. And so that's what actually inspired me to go to PT school. And so became a physiotherapist, or in the United States called a physical therapist. And that's where I was actually first introduced to these types of technologies that could help people recover following a variety of injuries.
Wow.
And that's actually where I first met Dave. So Dave and I have been working together for going on a decade at this point.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
so that's kind of how I kind of got into neuro rehab. And after my clinical work and practice, I went and got a PhD in neuroscience. I had some unanswered questions that were kind of nagging me, and I wanted to figure out how basically the best way to address those questions.
Wow, that's terrific.
Yeah.
And not to take off track there, Mike Peters is from South Wales, United Kingdom. Do you see the comments there that are coming up?
I do. Yeah. Let's see.
Yeah. Good morning, Mike.
Yeah, there's quite a bit out starting right now, but so
good.
Yeah, and David, you are a veteran entrepreneur.
Yes, that's right. Thank you for having us this morning, and for everyone. Thank you to everyone who's joining our stream. Yes. So I've done a couple of startups prior to starting Motus Nova, both in technology and in healthcare. And I actually was doing some clinical trials, or helping, I guess I should say, helping manage some clinical trials with the technology and the device. And these trials were actually specifically for rural veterans that had trouble seeking care with their recovering from their stroke. And that was actually one of the projects where I had met Nick while he was doing his studies in getting his doctorate of physical therapy.
Wow, that's great. So, I currently use the hand mentor right now, and I'm not sure if anybody knows what the hand mentor is, and I do have a little video, but can you explain what the hand mentor is and what it's all about?
Sure. Yeah. Dave,
yeah.
Have this?
I'll take a first. I'll take a first go, and then you can kind of amend with some more of the scientific background as well. So simply put, the hand mentor and the foot mentor, there's two devices that we have. What it is really it's a robot that's capable of moving you, and its goal here is to help mirror and replicate the recovery and rehabilitation experience that you would get at a high-level clinic or working with a clinician. And essentially, it's a programmable robot that is able to take in the movements, the commands of a skilled therapist, and be able to work with you one-on-one, at home, so that you can get all the hours of rehab that you really need to make those gains and to rewire those connections to bring back that function.
Right.
Yeah, and I'll quickly just expand upon that a little bit. And it's not only a really powerful interventional tool for you to recover, and what I mean by that is that it has been shown clinically to help improve your upper extremity motor function, so how well you can use your arms in daily life, as well as for the foot mentor, it can help improve your walking performance and gait. But it's also for the therapist out there. It's a really powerful tool to help them evaluate your current status, so that way they can tailor and custom make a program for you to help you where you are on your path of recovery.
Yeah, exactly. And salute saying rewiring is so important. So her husband, they live in Inglewood, California, but her husband had a stroke 2015, and she is amazing caregiver. So I just want to bring that up too. And also, I have a video here that, and I'll turn off the sound, what shows the hand mentor and the foot mentor. So I'm hoping everybody can see it. Can you see that, everybody there? Nick and David, can you see that?
Yeah, I can see that.
And I use that right there, hand mentor.
Yeah, and so this will walk you through.
I'm not sure we can hear you.
Can you?
I can hear you now, Jerry. I think.
Okay. Yeah, I took myself off there, but
That's okay.
But yeah, that's absolutely that hand mentor, because I haven't used the foot mentor, or device, but it really is. I used it the first time, and it actually tired me out.
Mm-hmm.
The next morning, I felt so sore.
Yeah, and also too, sore is okay, right? That means that you're putting in the work to drive those changes. I think someone said that the importance of rewiring, and that's actually with rehab. That's probably one of the only ways that we have now to actually rewire your brain, and that is to do the physical movements that you want to be able to operate in the world. And in order to make those movements, you have to work a bit harder and do that repetitive task practice. And that's what the hand mentor actually does, is it helps guide you through those movements. And it also takes away kind of the monotony, because if you do hundreds or thousands of repetitions that are required to rewire the brain,
Right.
it can be a little boring. So
yeah,
having that gaming interface where you're controlling, a spaceship on the screen or a virtual avatar makes the time go by really quickly.
Yeah, it does. And I see Steve. I'm not sure if you can see the question. Curious, has either one of the doctors ever looked at Dr. Tobenek's use of I can't read it, but I know it's very expensive and not 100%.
Yeah. I'm not actually sure specifically about that device that you're talking about, Stephen, but for us, our device actually, we worked really hard to reduce the cost, to make it accessible to people who have neurologic injuries.
And we jump in here, Nick. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And Stephen, like you mentioned, there's a plethora. There's a plethora of robotic devices out there. Many of them in various stages of study. So just so that we kind of lay the groundwork here, our device is an FDA Class 1 device. We've been through the clinical trials already, and it's been shown to be both safe and effective for stroke survivors in restoring function. We'll get into some of the science that kind of is behind the device. All these clinical studies over the past decade, it's about 15 years at this point of clinical research, over dozens of published peer-reviewed academic journals. But to get back on the topic of other robotic devices, or the general robotic devices, yeah, that's right. There are a lot of robots out there being used for stroke rehab and other types of rehabilitation as well. The biggest problem that we saw at Motus Nova for all of the robotic devices is how expensive they were, and then thus how inaccessible they were. Many of these devices are $250,000, $500,000 and up in terms of cost. And that at that expense, you really can't get that many robotic devices to that many stroke survivors. It's really a lack of access. A few lucky people might get one, or they might spend an hour on a device once a week. But really, if the goal here is to increase the number of hours of guided rehabilitation each stroke survivor gets, something that really has to come down is the cost, to a degree where then it actually is affordable for everyone. So that's something that we've been working on over the past 2-3 years, on bringing, like Nick said, bringing down the cost of our device from something that was in the range of a $20,000 device to something that is now something like $80 a week. Something that's much more affordable. And our work isn't done. We're still working hard at bringing down that cost. But you're absolutely right. The expense is, when you're looking at a robotic device, you not only doesn't have to work, it also needs to be financially accessible to actually make an impact for stroke survivors.
And that's actually one other large shift too that we've made over the past 2 years, is going away from a straight purchase price, which is what clinics or hospitals would typically do, to something that is more in line with the needs of the stroke surviving population themselves, and that is, you can use it for as long as you're seeing benefits. We don't think it's appropriate to force someone into purchasing an entire device when they may not need it for longer than 4 or 6 months or something like that. And that's just we're just trying to do right by this group of people, and that's one of the ways that we can do this.
And so the cost is with the hand mentor. Just taking that one, it's not terribly expensive if you look at it on a monthly basis. Because is it a rental type situation, or?
Yeah, exactly. So it's we call it a subscription service.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it's you can think of it kind of like that, as a monthly subscription. And so basically every month you can assess, hey, do I want to continue using it? Am I still seeing benefits? Am I still liking engaging with the device? You can do that on a monthly basis.
And just to add on there, the device is still available for purchase for those that it's not like we're trying to hide the device behind some kind of monthly fee. No, that's not really the goal of the monthly fee, is to make it more accessible for individuals. And this kind of goes back to Nick's point of we're not looking for people to outright buy this device if you only need it for 6 weeks or 3 months or 6 months, or whatever that period is for your recovery. After you're done, we'd love to get that equipment back, refurbish it, strip out all of the contact parts, put in the new parts that we need, and send it to someone else. That way, one device can help several stroke survivors, rather than just being stuck in a closet somewhere after someone's done with it. That's one way. By dividing up that cost, that's one way that we're trying to bring down the cost of this new technology, so that more stroke survivors can get it.
Right. So Serena is asking, now, you see the hand mentor, do you have to have an open hand? Because
Yeah, I saw that question, and I also want to make sure that I address a couple other ones that I saw here about. Let's see. There was one about the Sabo, whether it was kind of compared to the Sabo. And so I'll first just address Serena's question. So thanks so much for that. And I think what you're referring to is this idea of a flexion posture that often happens after a stroke.
Yeah.
Where you have potentially this sort of supination and this
Yep.
finger flexion, sort of, it's called DIP or distal interphalangeal flexion, kind of looks like this.
Right.
We have people who have engaged with the device successfully with a variety of levels of impairment in the upper extremity, all the way from what's classically called sort of flaccid paralysis, where there's maybe no muscle tone at all the way up to very, very high levels of tone in their upper extremity. It takes a little bit of time to get used to putting it on, but that sort of dependent on how much tone you do have. But we've had people with that sort of closed fist posture, that flexion posture, who've been able to engage in it.
Wow.
So it does work for a variety of people and a variety of impairment levels.
Right. Let's see. So yeah. So
Mike too. So Mike, I want to address your question as well.
Okay.
It's is it like the Sabo glove? And you can kind of think of it that way. I'd say there's a couple of big distinguishing features here. The one of them is, at least what we think is very, very important, is this idea of active assistance. This idea of active assistance is distinguished from sort of a passive assistance, where you can think of passive as just a series of springs that can provide help to movement, right? Just imagine your therapist coming in there and sort of like removing the effect of gravity or helping you move a little bit. The therapist can do this actively. They can dynamically tell how much help you may need during a range of motion. But with a spring, the way that springs are designed, they don't actually do that. They can only provide a set level of assistance throughout a range of motion, and that may not be the best for you. As you say, maybe early on in that flexion posture, you may need a lot more help to open up, reduce that tone, and then that ability, we wouldn't want to constrain you by providing too much assistance later on when you have reduced that tone, because then you wouldn't be getting what I like to call is the sufficient stimuli. You have to be working hard enough, and if there is too much help from a device, then you're not going to be doing the work yourselves, which is the thing that's going to drive the changes in your brain.
Yeah,
so this dynamic is really, really important.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize, like Dr. Nick said, how important this distinction between passive and active devices. A passive device just has springs inside. It's not trying to figure out how much assistance you need and adjusting to that. It's just a set spring with a set amount of force. You could think of it like a stretch band or any of these other types of assistive devices. Our device is different from that. It's the hand mentor and the foot mentor are active assistive devices. They have sensors on board that is constantly detecting how much assistance the user needs, the stroke survivor needs, and then adjusting the assistance to be appropriate for that. Sometimes that's more, sometimes that's less. And this is just like a real physical therapist or an occupational therapist would do in a clinical setting. It's really important that the amount of assistance is appropriate, because that's how we create that learning. That's how we make progress. If we help too much, then your movement will actually be overshadowed by the assistance, and you're going to hit this cap, and it's not going to be something that's maximally effective for you. So again, the passive devices, I wouldn't consider them robotic devices. I would just consider, we consider them just passive spring devices, as opposed to an active assisted device. It's a robot that's making decisions depending on the needs of the current user.
Right.
Yeah, and I also see Stephen here. So I know we had that question earlier from Stephen Albright. Thanks for clarifying that situation for you. Yeah, there can be a lot of challenges trying to interpret what's kind of online. I think that is a challenge for anyone who's a consumer of medicine. And I think we do our best at Motus to really present the facts and just present the evidence. And we know that people are will do their due diligence and look into this. And for us, we rest heavily on the scientific support and the scientific foundations that the hand mentor has. And I think, as Dave mentioned earlier, the very first study, the very first clinical study, was published back in 2003 with regard to the hand mentor and its sort of origins. And we've been engaging with independent academics and scientists since that time. And so we are really well entrenched with evidence, and we even when it comes to these sort of larger interpretations from organizations like the AHA, which is sort of the American version of the American Heart Association. They have a stroke consortium that makes guidelines, recommendations for sort of best practices. And in that sort of criteria, they define robotic devices that are these types of active assisted devices as being what they say is level 1A evidence, which is going to be the highest benefit to risk ratio, and it has the most evidence behind it. So you can see that kind of matrix in your mind of like the top left quadrant is the best sort of care that you can do. And the robotic devices that Motus has are in that category. And so hopefully that addresses that issue there of the evidence supporting the device.
Yeah, and I can speak because I've used the device. It's above me here, and I used it at least probably once a day. And someone asked me, does it use? You put your hand in and it just moves it? But you know what? It helps, but it helps with range of motion, and you have to use it. At least for me, hopefully I'm saying that right, because I know from my experience, I put my hand in and I use it, and especially if I'm using the ping pong or the different games. And I tell you, it really helps quite a bit. You have to use your hand to help for range of motion, and so I suggest this for anybody that can. It's really not that expensive. I mean, the grand scheme of things, like you said, I've seen so much devices out there that are so expensive. And when I go to therapy, I've been going to therapy 6 months a year for 9 years, except this year because of the pandemic. And most of the therapy tools I have are like handmade. The therapists make these things, but this is pretty amazing what I've used so far. So I really advise anybody that's interested to at least try it out.
Yeah, well,
that's great to hear, Jerry. Yeah. And I want to tack on real quick about you're talking about that the gaming, that entertainment side to it. That's something that we stumbled upon over the clinical studies that we did, the clinical work we did with universities and with clinicians. It started really as just kind of these lights, these two columns of lights that you were trying to match one column with the other, one representing your movement. And that actually inspired us to get into these video games where we are taking your movement of your hand or your foot and mapping that onto a spaceship. So you're dodging asteroids, or you're shooting enemies, or any other types of these games. And kind of conceptual, I mean, in hindsight, it all makes sense that was a big leap in helping people stay motivated to do their rehab. Of course, hindsight is 2020. And I think the analogy that I would use is a lot of stroke survivors are told, this rehab is going to be a marathon. It's going to be thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of repetitions over the next, not weeks or months, but many times years. And that sounds really daunting, a really large number. You have to do all of these repetitions. But then if you look at someone that plays video games, or any of us that use a keyboard, right? We use a keyboard every day in our lives. If I told you that over the next, year or several years, you're going to have to hit a key millions and millions of times, or hundreds of thousands of times, that sounds really boring and monotonous too. But the difference with playing video games is, it's the same 8 buttons on that control pad. But because you're not staring at the control pad, your mind is in this virtual space, in this virtual environment. It doesn't seem so monotonous that you have to do these motions over and over again. It feels like you're doing something new every time. You're flying a spaceship, you're flying a hot air balloon. you're chopping vegetables or something like that. Anything, we can imagine in this virtual environment. And that's kind of the transition that we made. We made rehab, even though, we can't lower the number of repetitions you need to make those new brain connections, because that's just biology, right? But what we did is we made those repetitions not as monotonous by mapping it onto that virtual environment with the video games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Nick.
Questions there too, yeah, Jerry. I'm trying to keep up here. There's a lot. So thanks.
Yeah.
Well, I'll start going backwards here. So, Mike, good question. So it's $80 a week, which is the subscription model. So that's about $349 a month, which is that range. Now, Dave, I don't know if we have anyone in the UK using the device right now. We have someone in Germany. Is that correct?
Yes. So we have some devices deployed internationally.
Yeah.
And the lawyers are all up in arms about. There's all these import-export rules. It's quite challenging to get a device across out of the U.S. I should say. We are based here in the U.S. in Atlanta, Georgia, so that's we can any international shipments, it has to be on a case-by-case basis. That's something that we're happy to talk about offline as well. But we do have deployments in I believe 5 countries. We have users in Germany, in China, in the UAE, and a couple of others.
Yeah. And I see. Let's see. So thanks, Mike. Hopefully that answered your question.
Canada as well, I should add.
Yeah, Canada. Yep. And salute. I think there is. This is a really. I think. Did you have a question earlier about active assistance? How much assistance is needed?
Let's see here.
Someone had that.
Salute. Let's see here. Yeah, is this right here?
So yeah, that's so robotic device active evidence shows this level 1. Yeah, so this is a theory that's defined by the AHA, or the American Heart Association's stroke sort of consortium, and they help sort of consolidate all of the evidence that's out there, because there's a lot of science, and they kind of consolidate things, boil it down into something that is actionable by clinicians. And what they do is they rank these things on a scale of 1 to 3 and A to D, I think A to C. And so things in the 1A category would be of the highest level of evidence, meaning the lowest risk of bias, be a good quality science. And it also has the highest level of benefit to risk ratio, right? Everything that we do, there's going to be some benefit to risk ratio. And these robotic devices fall in that category of 1A, where they have the highest level of evidence to support them, and they show the most bang for your buck, basically. And I think there was another question earlier. I can't remember exactly who it was, but they were asking about how much movement someone may need to have. And I also see one about active versus passive devices here. Yeah, I think I'll try to get to these questions.
Yeah.
I'll talk on real quick here about the cost, and we've been talking about cost because it is so important as well. That $80 per week. Now that's kind of the I should say that's if you just get the device through us, and there's no insurance involved, or there's no add-on with those. So we have individuals that do telehealth through our device with their clinicians, and for those that have insurance plans that cover this, and that's actually in the U.S. at least, it's most major insurance plans, including Medicare, and most major insurance providers. They will actually cover a portion of the cost of the device. Well, I should say most insurance providers will cover telehealth, doing telehealth with the Motus device, and for those individuals that do qualify, the costs, depending on the plan, of course. Now there's a lot of different insurance plans. Depending on the plan, it can be something as low as somewhere around $20 to $30 a week. So that's something that can really help provide a assistance to the cost, of the overall cost of the device.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so we've had people across the United States who have used, who are engaging with the device in that telehealth framework that Dave just described with their therapist, and I think these individuals have Medicare. I don't know specifically about Kaiser. I think there are a few people using that have Kaiser third-party payers, but again, there's a lot of differences at each state level, at least in the United States.
Yeah.
And so we're happy to talk offline and try to figure out what exactly those costs would look like for you in your unique situation.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are still saying, $80 a week or $350 a month or 300. That's still a lot of money, and it really is. And that's still something we're actively working on, reducing the cost of the device. We're trying to do that all of the time, because we've seen, Nick and I have personally seen, we have a lot of users that have great experiences, making great progress on the device. The biggest barrier to the hand mentor and foot mentor helping more people is, I feel, the cost. And so we are still actively working. You can feel assured that we're still trying to bring the cost down, and we have come a long way from a $20,000 medical robotic device, where at that price we still had individuals buying it, but we're talking about very few lucky individuals that can do that. We're not there yet. We're still, $80 is still high a week, and for some individuals that can get it for $20 or $30 from with the help of that telehealth through their insurance, that's great too. We want it to be as low as $10 a week, but that's something that's going to take time, and so that's something we're continuing to work at.
Yeah, and I think one sort of quick addition to that is that we are committed as a company to making all of those reductions translate and be transferred straight to the end user, whether that's the stroke survivor or their care partner that is helping them engage in this. And so because we are firmly committed to getting the device to as many people as possible, because we know it will help them.
And we think about cost as a cost per week, and that makes a lot of sense, because especially for the individuals that are on fixed income, or have something like that, it's a you get your income at a weekly basis or a monthly basis. So we do like to think of cost that way, but there's really another way that you can think about the cost of the device, and that's the cost per hour of guided rehab. Then that's I mean, at the end of the day, it's the number of hours or the number of repetitions that you do, number of movements that you do, that best predict how much functional gain that you're able to get. And even if it's, as a comparison to something that might be low cost, if it's something like $10 or $20 a week, but if you're only getting half an hour or an hour of rehab from that $10 or $20, that's actually quite expensive. With our device, because it's at home, because it's available on demand at any time, a lot of our users end up getting far greater number of hours of rehab and amount of repetition and task practice towards your functional recovery than if they needed to visit a external location or go somewhere. And that's typically something like 2 1-hour sessions a week, 2 hours a week. And so on our for many of our users, especially our power users that are using it more than an hour a day, relatively speaking, the cost per hour of rehab comes down to something like $10 per hour. And that, compared to a lot of other types of rehab out there, it's something that's, if you think about as how much money it's going to be for me to actually make those gains, it's definitely something that's very cost effective.
So who is a good fit for the hand mentor?
Yeah, this is a good question. I think there's a couple that are kind of in this vein. I was just sort of scrolling back.
Yeah, go through,
please. Make sure we
please.
didn't miss anyone. I know this is kind of along the line of Bryce's question a little bit earlier. About he says he can only squeeze his hand. I think after 12 years of stroke, and I think this is something that's really important to distinguish too. Is that who is a good fit? And when it comes to a couple of really important parameters, one of those is how long you are post-stroke. And the device, the Motus hand mentor device and the foot mentor devices have been studied in rigorous clinical trials with people who are chronically impaired, or who have chronic impairment. And so that actually, I think, extends out many, many years after diagnosis. I know this is a little bit different than the sort of classic interpretation from maybe some of the various medical organizations. They say, hey, if you know, at 6 months, this is kind of what you have. We know from the evidence that this is just not the case. It turns out that it does require work, but you can still make meaningful improvements long after a stroke.
Years after.
Years after.
Oh yeah.
And so
Yeah.
So thanks, Bryce, for that question. I think it is really important to highlight that that you can improve even 12 years after a stroke.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. Because me coming up on 10 years, I still see, you know, improvements, because I know your brain is rewiring itself, neuroplasticity, and you know, if you don't use it, you lose it. But one other question too is, what's the difference between, and I've used eStem, between the eStem and the Motus device?
Yeah, so there's a couple of big distinctions here. One of them, obviously, electrical versus sort of neuromechanical types of devices. The eStem devices rely on sort of, I'm going to use the word exogenous. Basically, it's external support of electrical current, right? You apply a pad on the surface of your skin, and that passes current through your muscle and contracts them. Now, I'd say of those, the difference between just a sort of kinematic and a kinetic type of device versus an electrical device, the big distinction is kind of at the boots in the ground level, and that is, what is it actually going to do for you? And when you think about them in that way, you can think about an eStem device as an assisted device. This is put on, and you can immediately gain some level of increased function. And that is what the science says. I'll be the first one to admit that. Now, and that's different, distinctly different than a repetitive sort of device like we have, repetitive task practice device, which is designed to be a therapeutic device, an interventional tool. And the nuance there is not so subtle when you consider what happens when you take the eStem device off. You very rarely will have carryover effects. And so you have to have the device on in order for you to get benefits from it. Whereas for us, our end goal would be you use the device as much as you can to get as good as you can, to get as much improvement as you can, and then never have to use the device again, right? We want you to have those persistent effects and maintain that improvement long after you send the device back.
I think that, like Nick said, the biggest differentiator here is the source of the electrical signal. For an eStem device, right, our muscles are activated by these electrical signals. And like Nick said, for an eStem device, the device itself is creating those electrical impulses to activate your muscles and to create that movement. And you see that movement immediately. It's kind of like instantaneous gratification, right? You hit that eStem device, it sends that electrical signal, and your hand or foot, your limb will move. But the source of that electrical signal is this device. And once you take it off and you lose that source, you're like Nick said, there's very little evidence that supports there's any or much carryover effect to actually you having improved. Now that's different from our device or other repetitive task devices that are therapeutic in nature, where we're not providing the electrical signal. We're training your brain to create those electrical signals so that the gains that you make are long lasting, that when you take off the device, you're still capable and continue to make those able to make those functional movements by sending those signals with your brain. So over time with an eStem device, you're kind of, you get better immediately, but that's where you are. The device is essentially stepping in and creating these electrical signals for you, versus in a therapeutic nature, what we are trying to do is over time build up greater and greater function, so that you can start somewhere, and over time you can reach gains that you may not be able to with just doing an eStem device that's not helping you increase your function over time.
And I'd also say too, just as a point of clarification, these things are not necessarily mutually exclusive, right?
That's right.
They can be used in conjunction with each other, right? You can imagine being an eStem device the sort of many people following stroke will be really familiar with an idea of foot drop, right? You can use an AFO, which is sort of an acid device that just makes you have that dorsiflexion, or you can use one of those active Easton devices that detects whether your foot's in the ground, and it will help you dorsiflex. So you can use that in parallel while you're trying to operate and go about your daily life, and then you can use something like the Foot Mentor to help build up that reservoir of functional capabilities like Dave was talking about. So they can be used in conjunction with each other. It's just, it's a matter of the long-term sort of goals. And if and then also trying to layer in the considerations for financial considerations, basically. Whether or not you can afford 2 devices and then what your end goal is.
Right.
Yeah, that kind of goes into, I was trying to go back and get Debbie's question too here.
Okay.
Debbie, it looks like you had your son had
a
stroke. He's at 1.5 years after the stroke. And this is, just like we were addressing Bryce's question earlier, there's really no time but the present to start. I think you can still improve, 1.5 years after stroke, many years after stroke. And so I think, for you with the foot drop, then the Foot Mentor would be a good tool to help with that process. It actually is designed specifically for foot drop. And the reason being is that's a critical sort of step, I guess pun intended, in being able to successfully ambulate. And so it is actuated at the foot and the ankle, and it provides that assistance in the dorsiflexion, and it can help you regain that control.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, when would I see results? That was a question I was thinking about earlier, but I know the results that I see after the one. I've only used it the one time. When I first used it, I saw a result pretty much right away because it actually helped me with my range of motion of my wrist. So that was a question I was going to ask. When, I know it's different probably for everybody, but when would I see results?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we can consider when we define. Apologies there. When we define results,
right?
And that could be, as you said, range of motion. And if someone has significant tone, and we are operating in a way to help reduce that tone, you can see a massive improvement in your range of motion. As you saw, Jerry, in just
yes.
Now, when it comes to improvements in sort of these long-term changes that Dave was talking about, the functional improvements, being able to pick up a Coke can or a soda pop, or being able to fold a towel, these types of things take a little bit longer to sort of develop. And when we look at the scientific data, those changes typically occur in the kind of 2 to 4 month range. We see significant improvements at that time frame. Now, as you rightly identified, Jerry, it can be very different for each individual.
Yeah.
That's just because every stroke survivor has a unique injury. They come into it with a unique set of abilities beforehand, and everyone may be able to take different amounts of therapy. And as Dave already said, this is one of the biggest drivers of improvement. And so if you can, take double the amount of therapy because, let's say you're a former athlete or for whatever reason, you may see different rates of improvement. So all those factors considering will help sort of predict what the timeline may look like.
And this kind of goes also back towards why we wanted to do a subscription model, rather than having to force our customers or our users to buy the device outright, because it's so difficult. Every stroke is different, so difficult to predict how much or for whom the device, the hand mentor or the foot mentor, these devices are appropriate for. So, that's why, we think that also the subscription model keeps us honest as well, because we have to keep delivering on those gains. And kind of that means that we're really like a team. We're in this together. Every step of the way, we're here to try to help you maximize the recovery that you're getting and to get as much function back as possible. And I actually right now we have I think this note from our marketing team that we are running a promotion where you can get your first month of rehab on the device for completely for free. I think we're planning on talking about that maybe at the end of the show. So stay tuned for that. But it's basically a rehab challenge. If you do enough number of hours in your first month on the device, you can get your first month of rehab. You can get your first month for free with the hand mentor or the foot mentor. And so that's something that we're trying to push as well, because what we see is individuals stroke survivors that really put in the time and the effort in doing their rehab, they can make significant gains. And that's what we're trying to promote as well, in kind of like a stroke rehab challenge, an hourly challenge.
Right. And I always say, because I've done a lot of interviews with stroke survivors, that every stroke, it has their own fingerprint, because there's none that the same. But I just go back here we get people from all over the country. Yvonne Kempeteris there, she's from Greece. So
Well,
good morning.
Morning from Greece, or I guess afternoon at that point, right?
Yeah. So yeah, let's see. I had some other questions I wanted to ask them. So if I have no movement in my foot or hand, is that something that can help me?
Yeah, this is a really important point here. I think the capabilities of the hand mentor and the foot mentor kind of span the gambit of an individual's abilities, and having this active assistance, this ability to actively monitor someone's current state and provide the assistance that they need at that point, will help us accommodate that variety of impairments. And so even if someone has no volitional activity, they can't initiate movement, the device can help them initiate that movement. And you can begin to get that sort of sensory experience that's also important for reprogramming your brain. And so someone in that situation would be able to engage in the device. All the way up to someone who maybe has full active range of motion, but they may have challenges with precise movement or precise control of movement, the temporal dynamics of movement, right? It's important to be able to control all of those aspects. And having that ability to finely tune what the device can do, not relying on springs, makes us be able to address and help all those individuals.
Yeah, I agree. And Stephen, thank you for doing that. That's what this is about, because it's helping me, and I've only used it for a week. So, kudos to you both for being on the show to help. Like, I don't know if it's marketing your stuff, but it helps stroke survivors, and it helps brain injury for rehab, and it's really important, because I'm trying to improve myself daily, and I do stuff all the time. And for me, I'm doing really good as far as my walking. And then January 29th, I fell and broke my hip. So it's just, so now kind of like took a little back, but I'm positive, and I know in a while I'm gonna call you if I can rent the foot mentor, because I think that would really help me too for my hip.
Yeah. That was actually one of the questions too. Is I think someone had earlier. Could you switch back and forth between?
Yes.
Another question there. Can you switch between the foot and the hand? Absolutely. And that's an easy fix. Actually, the whole thing doesn't have to come back. It uses the same sort of computer display, that virtual environment. So the only thing that has to be switched out is the device that goes on you. And that's pretty easy. Same sort of interface.
Yeah, and that's another question that we get. You don't need your own computer. The thing comes, the box comes with a monitor. It's kind of completely self-contained. There's nothing you need other than maybe a table and somewhere to plug the device into. And so it does come with its own. It's a 23-inch touch screen.
It's great.
It's, you don't need to hook up a computer. It's not complicated. We purposely made it so that individuals with very little experience with technology will be able to use the device. You essentially take it out, you plug it in, and then it will walk you through videos exactly how to put it on and start using the device. most of our users are able to, start doing rehab within the first 30 minutes,
Yeah.
20, 30 minutes of opening a device. And then, of course, we're always available, via call, and we're happy to video chat or phone chat or whatever, or through email, however, to help people get the device set up. But that's not something that we've had trouble with. And we've had users as young as 10, all the way up to as old as, I think, 97.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, we
nice.
had someone who was 5 years old. So
Really?
Okay.
Well, this is a good question Melissa has here too, because I think I know the answer to this, but you could probably say it in more technical terms than I could.
Sure. Yeah. No, this is exactly like that CPAP sort of model where we're monitoring with high fidelity. So something on the order of 50 times a second, we're able to monitor where you're moving and how much force your body is putting out. And that data is then used to not only program and help construct that virtual environment that you can interact with, but it also gives us some indication about how your movement is progressing, how your recovery is progressing. And this is how we can help fine tune the level of assistance over time, right? Because as you improve, if we continue the same level of assistance, you may not get, as I said earlier, that sufficient level of stimulation. And so we need to be able to accommodate that. And as you improve, the device is going to go in lockstep with you and improve.
Yeah, and I would say the data is kind of like, you could think about it like a coach, right? Like, if you're a baseball player, you get a coach that helps you with improving your swing or whatever that may be. The coach doesn't step in and swing the bat for you, right? The coach doesn't step in and help you do the movement. What the coach does is makes sure that the exercises and the training that you're getting is appropriate and maximally effective in making those gains. And that's kind of what the data helps the device do. There's a onboard AI that's that essentially recognizes how much assistance you need and gives you that appropriate amount of assistance, like a good coach would step in and give that help. At the same time, it'll, on an individual basis, it can, within a single day or within a single session, it can determine how much assistance you have. But then it can look over time. Maybe, you need more assistance, on a Tuesday or something like that. We can look at how days, or even within a day, how much, 30 minutes in, maybe you hit a plateau, and that's a time where you need the more assistance. Or maybe 15 minutes in is your max, that's when your performance is highest, and we can actually give you the greatest challenges as well. And that's a time that we need to push you. And then maybe 40 minutes in is a time where we need to kind of take a break a little bit. So just like a good coach makes a good training regimen, this is kind of how the data that we get from the device drives the best way we can give this course of rehabilitation. And then all of that is put into a report that is given to the stroke survivor and their caregivers. And this is another motivational element. We can actually tell you how many degrees of range of motion you have from week to week, rather than what is very typical in kind of in-person therapy, in physical occupational therapy, where you think you're getting better, but there's really no direct measure of how much you're getting better. We find that when we're able to tell people that, you've gotten 12% or 8% more range of motion between last week, between last month, or six weeks ago, that's something that keeps people going to do their rehab, so that they can hit that next level and get a new function back or do something new.
And also want to just acknowledge too that there's this, I love this, the community in the stroke surviving community, is that all this information that is learned about any individual person is also disseminated to help other people.
That's right.
The more we learn about the stroke surviving population and how your recovery is progressing, helps us help other people, which is a really sort of a beautiful thing about sharing the data.
This goes back to the science of it, like Nick was saying, I think in his introduction. where he had questions about how many hours of, and I'm sure many of the viewers also have had this question: how many hours of rehab do I need? How many repetitions? What number of repetitions do I need to get this X function back to be able to reach out and turn a doorknob, or grab to lift a fork or something like that? How can you tell me how many hours? And scientists ask the same question, and we don't have the answer to that, and that's because we don't currently have the data. We haven't done those 6-month, those long-term 3-month, 6-month, 9-month studies about and recording down exactly how many movements and repetitions and hours each individual has to get those functions back. In this robotic therapy, because by nature of the device, all of that data is recorded, we can help better understand how much recovery is needed to get certain specific functions back for specific strokes. So you're not only helping yourself with the data that we're getting here helps better inform, going into the future, every new stroke survivor, what would be needed to have a predictive algorithm of what is needed to get how much function.
Yeah. And I could say one thing, that after 1 week of using the hand mentor, and I'm really guilty of not doing my fine motor skills, and using the hand mentor, I can grab and hold on fairly well now. It's only been a week. Is holding to a little bottle, or I use a plastic one just because I know the end result. I drop the bottle, it breaks, but I've noticed that difference in just holding on a bottle with that hand mentor. So
yeah,
and so if I'm not into games, or I don't know anything about games or technology, will I be able to use this, or anybody else out there?
Yeah, I think that's a good point to acknowledge that just because you don't have any sort of technical background or experience with gaming does not preclude you from engaging in this. We've designed them to be really, really intuitive. And some of the games, they have varying levels of complexity. And so they also teach you how to play the games as well. So it's not like you're going into an arcade with no backup, right? As Dave says, the device is there to help you through that process. So yeah, pretty much everyone is able to.
Yeah. And it's not like there's a bunch of buttons you have to press. Really, what you do is you hit start therapy, and then you hit begin, and then you're right into it, where the movement of your limb is controlling a character on the screen. And it could be as simple as a hot air balloon that's moving either up or down, depending on how the angle or degree of range of motion that your hand or foot is in. There's something that much more complicated, where you're flying a spaceship back and forth and weaving between asteroids. So we have a whole range of different games and exercises for those, depending on what's entertaining for everyone. And we're putting out new games all the time. That's something that's part of our commitment in this kind of being a monthly service, and this being a team. We're committed to always improving the experience, so that you're always getting that value at the end of the month from what we're doing with the device.
And Yuan had a question a little bit earlier ago about it sounds like she's got a potentially an implantable device. It sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Yuan, but I just want to clarify too that because this is not an electrical stimulation device, people with implantable devices, LVADs, these types of things, there's no contraindication to using the Motus device, because it's not providing any exogenous current through you. And so it's safe and effective for those individuals who do have these types of devices that would otherwise preclude them from doing like an MES device or a functional electrical stimulation device.
Yeah. Also, so I know we're getting close. There's still, you can see this, so many questions. So can you play any games against someone else?
Oh yeah, this is a fun question. I think we're in the process of building that framework. We can have a community of stroke survivors playing against each other. So Dave had this wonderful idea, I guess probably a year ago at this point, right? Where we're trying to design these the community gaming.
Yeah, so we have actually some of the testing software that we have things like leaderboards, high scores, and you can kind of relative to each other, you could kind of have some healthy competition between you and the other users. And we're also we have kind of these live sessions that we're planning
Yeah.
on doing as well, where multiple users can sign on and join into a simultaneous session. Now, everyone's going to be on their own devices, but it's going to be synchronized as if we were all in a class doing the exercises together.
Mhm.
And that we're very well aware of and looking into how we can help improve the experience through this kind of social gaming
Mhm.
types of experiences.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. Did you see Jonathan Miller's comment?
I did, yeah. And I wasn't sure how much time we had, so I want to also first acknowledge too that we're available. So if you have questions that we don't get to during the course of today, reach out to us. We're really available. We're really happy to engage with anyone and address all these questions, or potentially even come back, Jerry, and do another.
Yeah.
But so let me just quickly address Jonathan's question here. It sounds like you have some significant spasticity in your left side. And are you still able to engage in the device? And yes, we talked about this a little bit earlier. You might not have been in the room for that, but the device is able to help provide assistance and help reduce that tone. It has a active assistive pneumatic device, a pneumatic actuator on it, basically a muscle, and this can help reduce the tone following stroke. And we're able to track not only the improvements in your range of motion, but also the improvements or the reduction in your tone over time, because we can actually monitor the forces that are put out by your muscles and the changes in the ranges of motion. So those two things together give us a really good idea about how your spasticity or tone is changing over time.
Yeah, we could go on for another hour. But I know that you had, or was it David or Nick? Someone wanted to say something near the end.
Yeah. As we're wrapping up here, I do want to mention that we're running a limited time rehab challenge, a stroke rehab challenge, where we challenge you. Well, if you're a stroke survivor, we challenge you. If you're a caregiver, we challenge a stroke survivor, your stroke survivor, or if you know a stroke survivor, we're challenging you to do 25 hours of rehab on guided robotic rehab on our device in the first month of receiving the device. And I think we think you'll be surprised at what 25 hours of intense guided high repetition therapy can do for your gains. And if you meet that challenge, if you do that 25 hours, if you hold up your end of the bargain, your first month, that month with that device, where you've had that device, is completely free. That's so we will pay for the cost of the device. And this is really kind of well, first off, we think that we know that there's a lot of stroke survivors out there that have gotten discouraged from the system. They've done a lot of things. It's been very expensive, and they really haven't seen a lot of gains. And so we kind of want to take this new tact where we're putting ourselves out there. If you're we can't do we can't do the repetitions for you. We can't do the put the time in for you. That's something that you have to do as a stroke survivor. But if you're willing to hold up, that side of that end and put in the work in that 25 hours, we're going to do everything that we can do, which is provide the device. We'll ship it to you for free. We'll pay for that first month of that subscription cost. And that's kind of the 25-hour challenge that we're currently running. It's a limited time. Depending on how successful it is, it's a limited time offer that we're doing. So please, go to our website, motusnova.com. If you know someone that's a stroke survivor, please let them know. There's really no strings attached. If you can put in that commit that time to it, There's no cost to this, and if we can make some great functional gains, or if we can make some gains, that would be fantastic. And if not, then that's fine too. The device is not for you. Every stroke is different, and it's not going to cost anything, as long as you participate in that challenge.
Yeah, that's terrific. We appreciate that, and again, I thank you, both of you, to be willing to be on the show, and it really means a lot. And I'm using currently the Hand Mentor, and I use it all the time. Believe it, I'm get tired, and I have some pretty good range of motion, but it actually helps my brain, the way I'm like I have to pay attention to a lot of different things that are like the music part of this device. And wow, it gets me. And it's so for neuroplasticity, for me, I feel it's made me a big difference already. So, I want to use it more and more and more. But you get tired. But it's awesome.
That's great to hear, Jerry. Yeah, and we want to work you hard. That's really the goal here. It's not going to be a cakewalk. We'll definitely promise you that. That's not the goal, right? We want to make sure that your exercises are challenging and appropriate for you. Something where you're working at a very high level, and at the end of the day, it's gonna tire you out. But that's how that you've put a good hard day's work in, and that's where we see the most gains.
Yeah. So any last words for you, Nick, too? And I real quick is everybody, you can see the crawler underneath, the phone number, the website, email. Check it out. It's pretty amazing. This equipment is just, you're not going to be disappointed at all.
So I guess just final thoughts. I just wanted to quickly thank everyone for jumping on the live stream and for your wonderful questions. It's always a pleasure for us to talk with stroke survivors across the world.
Yeah.
And if you guys have any additional questions, reach out to us. We're happy to talk with you, and we would be more than happy to help you on your course of recovery in whatever way we can.
Always happy to talk to stroke survivors. Nick and I have been doing research for stroke rehab for the past decade, more than the past 10 years, and it's something really close and dear to us and our intellectual pursuit. So always happy to talk. Please reach out to us anytime. If you have questions, one of our specialists, stroke survivor rehab specialists, can help with those questions. And if something that only Nick can answer, we're happy to have him also help with those questions as well. So if anything, please come to us as a resource for your scientific questions about stroke rehab. And we'd love to see you try out and accept our challenge. Try out our device, and together we're hoping to get you closer to your functional goals.
Perfect. Well, thank you both for being here, and thank you everybody that were here and getting involved. So we really appreciate it. So thank you again, and we'll see you next time. Have a great